right off the bat. We are broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and of course, Roku TV as part of the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. And just on cue, as on cue, he said he was going to be a few seconds late. Bam, there he is. Only a couple of seconds late. We just got started here. I didn't even get through my intro yet. So we have
Let me explain why I came in when I did. Compare it to an NFL player who holds out, assigns late. He doesn't want to go through training camp. He just wants to be there for the season. So I didn't want to go through like pre-show stuff. Hear all you had to say, Pax. I just want to show up for the game itself, and here I am.
There we go. You know what? Sometimes it's better just to wing it, and not even have to worry about, any of the pre-talk meetings or whatever. It's just we can go ahead and just, throw it out there and then wing it, wing the show. That's the way I like to do it, anyways. I'm off the cuff guy.
Well, that's what got me through school. Just, you wing it. You go there, you ask beforehand whether it's multiple choice questions. So you got a shot at getting it right.
Exactly. So, of course, as you see, we have Hall of Fame boxing writer Jack Hurst, who just joined the show. Like I said, he was here a couple of seconds late, but we knew that was ahead of time, so we were already prepared for the fact. I was ready to go for a full 20 minutes if I needed to, but I don't need to because we have Jack here. Jack, you know what? I'm going to start off something actually that's right up in your wheelhouse because I know that there's some big fight that's happening this weekend, and of course, the name that everybody seems to know is Tyson Fury. And of course, he's not the one fighting here for the World Heavyweight Championship. It's Usyk versus Joshua. I know that public opinion is a lot more for Joshua than for Usyk. Why don't you talk a little bit about this, about what's happening? And it's happening on Saturday, correct?
Right. We'll start off with Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury basically is the lineal world heavyweight champion. Basically, I don't want to go back through the whole history of boxing, who beat who for the title. That would take too long, but we'll simplify it. He beat Vladimir Klitschko to win his title, so that made him the real champion. Since then, Fury's been retiring on and off. Last week, he announced his retirement again. He said he's definitely through this time. We've heard it before, and he's come back. But you want to know something, Pax? The boy who's cried wolf, eventually they're going to believe him, and no one's going to come to his aid. And I am sick of Fury announcing his retirement. He announced his retirement very clearly about a week ago. So as far as I'm concerned, he's given up all rights to call himself the world heavyweight champion. If he announces today that he's, rescinding what he said, he's coming back to the ring, too late. You handed in your papers. You handed in your retirement papers. You work for a company. You hand in your retirement papers. You can't decide you're coming into work next week. I mean, maybe if you're long-term employed at a place, they let you get away with it once or twice, but enough's enough. They hired someone else for the position. And that's you, Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua. They're going to fill that position. Fury can't decide he's going to come back and call himself the world heavyweight champion. It's complete nonsense. Now, Fury can come back and people can call him the best heavyweight in the world if they want. That's fine. That's a matter of opinion. They can call for a Fury fight against the winner of Usyk and Joshua. That's fine. That's the fight everyone will want to see. But Fury is no longer the world heavyweight champion. Whether he gets a 50-50 split or not, that's okay if he fights the winner of Usyk Joshua. But I don't want to hear any of this talk about Tyson Fury being one of the world heavyweight champions if he announces he's coming back to the ring. Now, Saturday, Alexander Usyk against Anthony Joshua. They fought, the last time they fought, Usyk defeated Joshua. It was considered an upset. Not to me. I picked Usyk in that fight because Usyk was a great amateur, as was Joshua to an extent, because Joshua did win an Olympic gold medal, even though he didn't have the amateur pedigree that Usyk had. and Usyk was just more well schooled. But the reason a lot of people were picking against Usyk the first time around, because he was a cruiserweight who had just moved up to heavyweight. He'd only had a couple of fights as a heavyweight, so they were thinking in terms of Usyk maybe being too small for Joshua, who was a big heavyweight. But Usyk's skill level kind of outdid Joshua's size. And also, Joshua, the bigger man, didn't really impose himself on Usyk during the fight. And he was criticized for that. But my theory is he couldn't impose himself on Usyk. He's not going to come in and throw a lot of wild punches. Usyk was able to hold him off. So now they have the rematch, which was Joshua's right to exercise under the contract. He had a rematch clause. A lot of credit to Joshua for taking this rematch. He didn't have to do it. He could have regrouped with a warm-up fight in between, and the big fight still would have been there for Joshua. But he enforced the contract in Saudi Arabia, which is basically neutral ground, because in Saudi Arabia, they have the money to put up, for an event this massive. And that might be the new thing in boxing. The big fights that won Las Vegas PAGs might now be finding themselves in Saudi Arabia, because, if they're going to pay the money, that's where the promoters and the fighters are going to go to. So they fight Saturday. It'll come on about 5, 6 o'clock, maybe Eastern time in New York. They have it's set, for the masses time-wise what to do. And I'd like Usyk again in this fight. Okay,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, now, because Tyson Fury retired, will this unify the belts? Or is because he just retired and he had one of the belts, and of course we talked about on show the gloved fist about the ring. The ring's not really a belt; that's just more like a prestige
it's
thing.
symbolic. I mean, when they say the Ring Magazine belt, you know what it is? The publication I write for Boxing News. I'm the senior American correspondent. It's been in business longer than Ring Magazine. It's from the UK. It's a weekly publication, has more content and everything, and is outdid Ring Magazine in the writing contest awards. But Ring Magazine is basically it's a worldwide entity. Don't get me wrong. We're a famous worldwide entity, and it had the most famous journalist ever. As far as boxing went, Nat Fleischer, who started Ring Magazine, he passed away in 1972. But he was iconic during, his era. So the Ring Magazine belts, it's kind of a tradition. They were handed down through time to great champions like Joe Louis, and they were given to champions before the sanctioning bodies came into existence and were handing out belts. So it is a famous thing. But in all honesty, it's just a magazine now that, is owned by Golden Boy Promotions that was conflicted and did get caught up in scandal in the late 1970s with the Don King tournament, Ring Magazine. So, I mean, it's a top of the line magazine. It has top of the line writers, but I don't want to hear the Ring Magazine belt. I don't want to hear any belt at all from whatever, because we know or should know who the champion is in each division. It's common sense. I mean, it drives me crazy what my buddy Frank Laterzo says on Glove Fist. He says, well, he has 3 belts and the other guy has 1. I don't want to hear it. I mean, these sanctioning bodies look for reasons to strip guys of the title. They all want their own champions. If they allowed this to go on in baseball, PAX, the Philadelphia Phillies would be declared World Series champions if they won 1 playoff series in baseball. If they got by the wild card series, they'd enter the wild card series, best 2 out of 3. And the International Baseball Federation, I'm just making that up, if they existed, International Baseball Federation, forgive me because I've never heard of you, I'm just making up a name. It's going to then say the Philadelphia Phillies are the world champions. But the and they would disregard the Dodgers, the Yankees, or the Braves, and so on. And it's less about Usyk Joshua. The winner is the world heavyweight champion because Tyson Fury announced his retirement. Listen, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier. Ali wasn't allowed to fight. Not during this time, he wouldn't go into the armed services. Not his fault. He wasn't allowed to fight. He wanted to fight. It was unjust. While he was appealing his case, him being denied his license to box. But the fact is that Ali, during that time, announced his retirement and he even offered to give his Ring Magazine championship belt, which was more prestigious then than now, because the sanctioning bodies, only a couple were in existence and they were fairly new. He offered to give it to the winner of the Joe Frazier, Jimmy Ellis fight that was going to take place in Madison Square Garden. But when Ali announced his retirement, the winner, Frazier Ellis, would be declared the world heavyweight champion. Frazier won. So when Frazier fought Ali on March 8th, 1971 in the fight of the century, Joe Frazier was the defending world heavyweight champion, even though Ali was the one who actually won it in the ring against Sonny Liston. But Ali announced his retirement. It's not your personal property, Pags. You could retire from being the Philly sports guy altogether, saying, I give up that title. I don't want, I'm done with watching Philly sports. I'm done with going to the games. And someone else could pick up and take up that title. They could call themselves the Philly sports man or whatever. And then you can make a comeback and go, I'm the real Philly sports, so-and-so. You can't just give up your darn title like that. It's not your own personal property.
So ultimately, I mean, because obviously it sounds like that Tyson Fury is playing a game here, and it's more or less just to try to raise the purses for when whoever wins this fight, so they make a comeback and say, all right, now we could not, it would be the unification of these belts as there's now 4 bodies, even though he's not fighting, he's retired, he's retiring as the champ. If that's the case, then that belt would have to go to the number one listed on there to say, okay, the number 1 should fight number 2 to be able to get that belt. But ultimately, because this is happening and Usyk has 3 belts and Joshua lost to him the first time around, this is going to be
the WBC is slow to accept Fury's announcement because they want him to remain as their champion. The sanctioning bodies get 3% of a fighter's purse. People don't realize the way the money is cut up. Let's say the 4 belts. Let's say the guy is the so-called undisputed champion. The word undisputed champion is pure rubbish to me. It's nonsense. When people say, oh, was Lennox Lewis ever the undisputed champion? Of course he was. I don't care how many belts he held. He doesn't have to have any of the sanctioning body belts, and he's the undisputed champion to me. We know, who, won the title or whatever. I mean, the LA Rams, imagine someone after they won the Super Bowl stripped them of the title, or right before they played the Super Bowl, one football federation says, oh, well, their game that they're playing against the Bengals wasn't going to be for the NFL championship. I mean, it would have been nonsense right before the game they decided. But Tyson Fury's made bold announcements before. Listen, he said a while ago when he was champion, he's going to give all his money to charity that he has. All his money is going to charity. That's the last we heard of it. We haven't heard what charity got his money. Did he give anything to charity? I don't know. But listen, you might say, well, some people are quiet. They like to do things behind the scenes. Well, if you like to be quiet and modest and do things behind the scenes, don't announce you're giving it all to charity. Now we want to know what charity's getting it. Maybe someone could have a suggestion about their, being a good charity. Listen, I'm all for, I'm all for saying when someone does something nice, some people like to announce it. Some people like to keep it quiet. Look, speaking of Philly guys, there's a Bernard Hopkins, who I've had mixed feelings about. Philly guy, the ultimate Philly guy, great middleweight champion. He did something very nice once. Okay, there was a ride I knew, where I won't mention his name. He had to have an operation, and and he owed a bill of a few $1,000s. Hopkins knew that guy from around Philly, member of the media, and he very quietly picked up his hospital bill. I know because the person told me what Hopkins did for them. Okay, if what for him, but Hopkins never announced it.
Right, it wasn't
And
news. He didn't need to get accolades or patted on the back saying, "Hey,
right,
listen, you did a really nice thing for hooking
yeah,
somebody up with the hospital bill." And there's probably reason for that. I mean, obviously Bernard Hopkins is well known in Philadelphia, and I have to imagine that the moment that something like that leaks out a little bit, that everybody else was calling up, "Hey, Bernard, why don't you pay my bill? Why don't you do this? Hey, why'd you cover this guy and not me?" And it actually, the no good deed goes unpunished.
it
And
goes on all
ultimately,
the packs. It goes on all the time. This was, boy, it must have been in the late 1980s, Pax. Late 1980s. I'm doing a dressing room report on this Canadian fighter, Olympic silver medalist Sean Sullivan. His advisor was Mike Trainer, who has handled all of Sugar Ray Leonard's business affairs. And Leonard, technically, he managed Sean Sullivan, but he wasn't there that evening. And it was at Madison Square Garden's Felt Forum. Someone made their way into the dressing room and they wanted to talk to Ray Leonard. And they're asking Mike Trainer because they have a business proposition for him. Come on. I mean, like, if someone is really, really wealthy, do you want to hear their business propositions? I mean, it's one. Listen, I'm not against taking a chance on something sometimes, okay? But you have to be careful because you got to cringe a little with Magic Johnson with Nike. Magic Johnson must have about, by my estimates, I heard a lot of years ago he had 500 mil. So they're not having any benefits. 500 mil, you're comfortable the rest of your life beyond words,
right.
materially. But to think of what he could have gotten, with that Nike thing with the stock, $6-7 billion he'd have by now. He could have gone out. He could have bought a sports franchise, not just been a tiny minority owner.
Right.
Okay, so so you never know, like what's what. But just getting back quickly, Usyk, Alexander Usyk, Anthony Joshua. Can Joshua do anything different in the rematch? Last time Joshua lost a decision, it should have gotten stopped late in round 12. They rang the bell early. You could just go to YouTube and watch the tape. Joshua was in trouble, okay? And the fight was in England, so they kind of pulled him out, a little earlier than they should have. I can't believe the bell accidentally rang early. You never know, but no one makes a fuss out of it because Usyk, bottom line is Usyk won. And so no harm realistically done. But Joshua got a new trainer, Rabbit Garcia, who trains his fighters to be more aggressive. So Joshua is going to try to be more aggressive. He's a big, powerful guy, strong puncher, capable of knocking Usyk out. But Usyk knows his way around the ring. What happens when Joshua starts expending a lot of energy? His stamina's been a bit spotty. He's not as finished a product as Usyk. I got to go with Usyk to stop Joshua late in the fight. Let's call it round 11. But Joshua's focused. I got to believe Joshua's given himself the best chance of winning in this fight. And even though I'm picking Usyk to win again, it wouldn't be a shock to me if Joshua won. I wouldn't even be surprised if Joshua, regained this title because he certainly's got the ability, the talent, where I can see him actually winning the fight, even though I'm picking against him.
So again, real quickly, I'm going to ask this last question before we kind of move on from this. I know that there are 4 sanctioning bodies specifically, and
Yeah.
that Usyk has 3 of those belts. Are all 3 of those belts on the line? in this
Yeah,
fight?
all the belts on the line. Yeah.
Okay, so that was that. So I wanted to know if there was any possibility that the only maybe two of the belts was on, so that Joshua could win one, Usyk would keep one, and then Fury would keep one, or at least say that
Well,
he
Fury,
was
no, Fury's belt isn't going. Fury's belt that he gave up, the WBC belt, they haven't taken it away from Fury yet.
right.
Fury announced he retired. They want to give Fury some extra time. In other words, they don't want him to retire. Okay.
Right. They're
Now, as
waiting to see
far
what
as the
happens
other three
here.
belts go, let me tell you, the other three belts, WBA, IBF, and WBO. And I'm not even talking about the IBO belt. They're a smaller sanctioning body, but you know, but they don't carry quite the same clout as the other four. But what's going to happen after this fight? Let's say Fury changes his mind. The WBC is going to keep him as champion. They'll keep him as champion because they're taking their time vacating that title. Either the IBF, WBO, or WBA is then going to tell the Usyk Joshua winner, well, you have to fight this guy, this mandatory challenger, or we're going to strip you of the title. And so what's going to happen is the Usyk Joshua winner, instead of fighting Fury if he comes out of retirement, is going to fight their mandatory challenger to hold on to that title, or they'll go ahead and fight Fury in a massive fight for the real title. But one of the sanctioning bodies is going to strip them of their belt. So let's say the Usyk Joshua winner fought Fury. The winner of that fight wouldn't be called undisputed by the idiots out there. They would say, oh, well, John Smith, he holds this title now. He's a champion. They go along with the corruption. Okay? They go along with that, the public. I mean, they don't, and they have this too. Listen to what they have to dig this, Pags. They have franchise champions. They have, they give them names, different names. So you get a WBA champion, for example. They'll call one guy a regular champion, one guy a franchise champion, or one guy an interim champion. And there'll be more than one champion of that sanctioning body. So it's crazy. There's so many multiple champions to go along. I think there are less teams in the NBA playoffs soon than they're going to be, champions per division. And then they have, listen to this, the stupidity continues where people don't get it. A fighter will tell himself, well, I'm the junior champion of the world. I'm junior welterweight. That's great. You're the king of the junior varsity. Think of it that way. You're not even ruling that division. No one stops and thinks. So now what they do, tradition used to be welterweight division, middleweight division. Now, for example, there's a super middleweight division they're going to have. And never mind all the weight poundages, flyweight, super flyweight. It's only 3 pounds apart. I mean, the insanity is idiotic, Pax, and I don't take it seriously. I'm sorry. I know who the good fighters are. I know what the good fights are. I don't need to be told so-and-so holds a belt. It gives the elite fighters the elite fighters excuses not to fight one another because they have to fulfill their obligation and take on a mandatory challenger who in a lot of instances, no one's even heard of the darn guy. They've had him fight a bunch of fighters with losing records so they can get him a rating and pad his record and make it look good and then get him a title shot. I mean, it's pure, it's pure silliness, the whole thing. But that's the sport of boxing. I don't make any excuses for it. But Usyk Joshua, now there's a good fight. Nothing like great fights, Pags. Usyk Joshua is an outstanding quality matchup. And the fight stands on its own merits, number one. And number two, it is for the World Heavyweight Championship. But with that said, the best heavyweight in the world is Tyson Fury.
Got you. So with all this other stuff that's going on, and trust me, I get it. I can imagine that when you have 18,000 people listed as champions, it's hard to figure out who is who. I mean, I remember the days of Marvin Hagler and Hearns. That fight where everybody watched. We watched it on ABC because they showed it on ABC. It was in the middle of a stadium that
Well,
was
on
packed
replay, it
full.
was on closed circuit TV, and then they showed the replay on ABC. It was in the
Right.
movie theaters, yeah, at that time. Yeah, yeah.
So, but I remember watching those types of things when boxing was at its heyday. And now you have thousands of champions. You never really know who's doing well. There's not really many names that really stand out. Tyson Fury is the name that stands out because he made the most media news. I didn't really even know who Joshua was until I started to follow your show a little bit. So it's hard to kind of keep track. But you know who I do know as a boxer? Jake Paul. And
Okay.
how
Mhm.
much is that more of a comedy in boxing, or is that now giving it more credence that, hey, there are some people that, I mean, listen, I they do all this training now. He actually does a lot of training to box, and you know where everybody else, everybody he's boxed up to this point has looked at it more as a joke. He's actually taken it a lot more seriously because, hey, if you're going to go ahead and say, I'm going to take on you and I'm going to beat you in a boxing ring, he wants to prove that he can be somewhat of a boxer. Listening to your show most recently, Frank actually he's like, listen, he's a boxer now. Is he as great as he thinks he is? No. But he's obviously a boxer because when you train and you start to prepare for boxing fights as a boxer, you become a boxer. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So do you find that this is more of a joke that they've done that's kind of gotten some legs and now has tried to bring more notoriety back to boxing? Or is it looked in the boxing community itself as this is just goofy. We're not interested.
I got to tell you, right before the pandemic, about 2, 3 weeks before, that was like 2.5 years ago or so. I went to a show in Miami. Okay, quality fights. Demetrius Andrade, unbeaten middleweight, is the main event there. Some other real quality fights. From Philadelphia, Tevin Farmer, was on there. He lost his sanctioning body belt that night. And on the card too was Jake Paul fighting a YouTube guy fighting Anson Gibb, another YouTube guy. And I was filing a report on the fight, and the editor said, "Feel free to comment on this nonsense if you want." Meaning, he thought I might completely ignore the fight because when you file a report, we have at boxing as a results box. Something, and you're given a word count in advance. You can't just go on and on. The way I'm blabbing on this show, I'm given unlimited words to talk to you. I'm not given unlimited words in print when I file a report because they got to put together, the paper. So I did that, and I did a column, and Jake Paul came on late at night. And I was kind of getting tired by the time he came on. But when Jake Paul entered the ring against Anson Gibb, the arena kind of woke up. And I'm looking around and I'm smiling over what's going on in the arena. And it was a pathetic mismatch. He stops Anson Gibb in one round, but it created a buzz and people were tuning in. And maybe the zone that broadcasts the app that broadcasts the event, maybe they got new subscribers. The idea that people are tuning in, I'm not against it. Jake Paul is giving a sincere effort in the ring. The thing is, he hasn't fought a boxer as of yet. He's fought mixed martial artists, YouTubers, this and that, because he's an amateur, basically. An amateur who's learning, a novice amateur. But when you're in the gym 3 years already, you're no longer a novice amateur boxer. You're in a kind of starting to become an experienced amateur boxer, not necessarily a good one. You could be a pretty poor one, but you're gaining this level of experience where you no longer look so amateurish. You're training all along. And now he's at the stage, Jake Paul. If I had to compare him to a real professional boxer, I can do it and say, look, it's very early in his pro career. He, has a lot to learn. He's a way to go, but the improvement's coming there. Do I see the potential for him to become elite on the professional level? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Can he turn out to be a quality 8-round fighter? Can he basically be a competent professional boxer? Sure, I think he maybe can. I mean, maybe Jake Paul, if he keeps it up, will be good enough to be top 50 in a weight division, conceivably. If he keeps going and going and going, maybe not. I don't know. But it's at the point now where, unless he comes up with a great gimmick, he's got to step up in class. But Jake Paul is a brilliant businessman in what he's doing. And let me tell you what Jake Paul is going to do, Pax. He's going to continue to push a little more. And when his name is at peak value, he's not going to take a chance, try not to take a chance in losing to a so-so pro fighter. He's going to go for the gusto. He's going to do something crazy like challenge Canelo Alvarez. Canelo will destroy him. Don't make any mistake about it. At best, Jake Paul will be semi-competitive, get stopped in 5-6 rounds, and maybe somehow win one round before that, at best, okay? At best. And don't count on that happening. But he'll cash in. People get excited. Jake Paul will curse out the Mexican heritage, do anything he has to do, the entertainment and this and that, get Canelo furious. And a guy like Canelo will look at it as easy money. Wow, I'm fighting this YouTube guy and they're giving me like $25 million for this. I mean, let me, grab the money. So that's what Jake Paul's going to do. Eventually, he's going to try to cash out, take it as far as it can go and come out way ahead of the game in the way he does things. But is he good for boxing? I mean, why not? Why not? I don't see him being bad. What's he hurting boxing? Boxing's a gutter sport in the way it does things. I was listening, Pags, to A-Rod. The A-Rod Jeter were on the ESPN2, and they were talking, and Michael Kay was talking with A-Rod at the end about why in baseball, when a guy uses PEDs, they can't get in the Hall of Fame, but other sports are more forgiving. And look at boxing. We have a bunch of PED guys. They're getting into the Hall of Fame overwhelmingly on the first ballot. Overwhelmingly, Pax. Okay?
Right. Well, because, and that's because, again, necessarily to do with how you got there. It's what you did for the sport of boxing. So, I mean, Mike Tyson, as he got older while he was boxing, although he still had the power, he just was no longer a boxer anymore. He was just the name, So like I thought that fight with Holyfield where he bit his ear. I mean, I thought that the biting of the ear gave him another 3 fights because everybody wanted to see it. It didn't matter whether he was a boxer anymore or not anymore. It was more of the sideshow. You wanted to see Mike Tyson. He was great at one point, not great anymore, but it doesn't matter because you just don't know what he's going to do. What type of guy is he going to come in to try to eat your children? Is he going to bite your ear? Is he going to do whatever he needs to do? And like I said, he had stopped being a boxer or caring about boxing from before the Buster Douglas fight, or else Buster Douglas wouldn't have never won that fight. I mean, I just don't think that Tyson cared anymore. But they kept throwing him back in there because he was the draw. He was the Tiger Woods of boxing at the time. And then you had Lennox Lewis and Evander Holyfield. George Foreman would come back at age 45, where he's, literally he shouldn't have been in the ring either. But there was just no other names really available to keep boxing in the heyday because it still was only a decade away from when things were so great. And now it's not great anymore, and you don't think of these names anymore. I mean, obviously Tyson Fury, he's got the name that gets people spurned up. Alexander Usyk is okay. I didn't know who he was. Obviously, they never fought. Same thing with Joshua. Did Joshua ever fight Fury?
No, no. If Joshua wins, an all British matchup against Fury in England would kind of stop the country. Everything would stop for that fight. It would be off the rails. That's how big it would be in England. But money talks. It would be interesting, the business end. If Joshua wins, they could put it in Wembley Stadium that seats like 90,000. They could double the stadium and it would sell out 180 or whatever. It would be incredibly big in England. Incredible isn't a strong enough word to use for how big that would be. Yet chances are the fight winds up in Saudi Arabia because money talks. And there's even a debate there because they're talking about human rights and this and that in Saudi Arabia, whether the fight should be held there. But this is boxing. You put the money up and fighters go where they go. We had the controversy like that before with South Africa years ago, whether fighters should go there and fight or not. Excuse me.
Well, I agree. I find that this is, it's all part of the show. And you're right. Dubai has got all the money. They got all the money in the world to be able to do whatever it is they want to do. So why not? As I think about the biggest purse that there was for a boxing match that has ever happened was Goofy. It was straight out, just was theater when you had what was it, Hopkins versus what's his face from the MMA, where it was $400 million purse. I've never heard of another purse.
No. Mayweather, Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor.
Right, and that was it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. There was no.
Well, it's entertainment, Pax. I'm not against guys making money, milking out entertainment. Who are they hurting? I don't want to hear, well, they're hurting the sport. Boxing doesn't have such a wonderful reputation that you can't insult boxing already. It makes me think of a little, it pops into my head examples like the Lenny Dykstra, Ron Darling thing. According to Ron Darling, Lenny Dykstra was yelling some racial things at Oil Can Boyd when he was on the mound in the '86 World Series. And Dykstra was sued Darling about it, and no one else heard it. And even players like Darryl Strawberry came to Dykstra's defense, and he's not that type of guy at all, blah, blah, blah. But the judge ruled in Darling's favor, not because the judge believed Darling. The judge said basically to Dykstra, your reputation is so bad, Darling can't damage it anymore with what he said. And that's what it is. Okay, here with boxing, the reputation is so bad. Okay, I mean, what are we going to damage it with gimmicks, with this, with that? So Mayweather's fighting Conor McGregor. It didn't hurt the darn sport. It could have hurt a little more if you say anything hurt it. Pacquiao against Mayweather. That was truly treated like a Super Bowl of boxing. It was 5 years in the making. They finally fought. And people would be having parties on the Saturday night of the fight. And people who weren't even boxing fans were having parties, Pax. And it turned out to be a boring fight. And the crazy thing about it, 1 year before that fight, yours truly presented Floyd Mayweather the Fighter of the Year award at the MGM in Las Vegas. Okay, that's the Academy Awards of boxing. I presented him the award. You could find it on YouTube. Okay. 1 year later, people asking me, oh, you're going to Vegas for the fight. I not only didn't go to Vegas for the fight, it was $100 to get on pay-per-view. To me, it was an overhyped fight. So I wrote a story. I wasn't even going to not only not go to Vegas, I wasn't even going to get the pay-per-view of it. Okay, imagine that. I wasn't going to see it live. I went to a flea market, Pax, with $100 on me, and I wanted to, and I wrote a story how the money could be better spent. And I started spending stuff, $100 worth of flea market stuff. I came out with a whole bunch of things, Pax. I had a $15 pair of imitation Air Jordans. Okay. Listen, I had this blazer for $2, a green blazer. It didn't fit me, but you couldn't tell unless I was there and the friend, it looked good. And I'm posing for pictures the whole time. The only time the guy got uptight when I had the men's underwear there. I got a watch, a couple of belts. I took the missus was with me taking the pictures. I bought her like this jacket there. So I had a whole bunch of stuff. How much of it lasted, but I just wanted to show how the money could be better spent, and it was funny. And I entered it in the writing contest and got third place for columns, third best column of the year. So I got a kick out of that. But at the end of Pacquiao Mayweather, all I heard from people, oh, what a boring fight. We got ripped off. What a jip. We got cheated. Blah, 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 blah. The same people, Pags, who claim they got cheated are going to be back. It's like the customer that goes to an Eagle game and every game is ending. They're losing 3-0, 3-0, one field goal the whole game. Give them a reason to come back and the fans will keep coming back. They'll vent, but they'll come back. Unless you're a Flyer fan, then maybe you'll you're finally fed up and keep away.
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll find out this year exactly how many people did exactly that because from what I've heard, there's been a number of season ticket possibilities have opened up for that team. So, and I know that you like to bust my chops about the Flyers all the time. I guess that's a good segue to get away from boxing. But like I said, anybody who wants to watch, it's going to be around 5, 6 o'clock. You'd have to find it somehow, some way. It's not going to be simple for the fight.
The app, The Zone. The Zone gives you good value if you subscribe for the year. There are a lot of good fights. For example, this fight I'm a subscriber. I'm going to be getting it as part of my subscription. And the subscription was reasonable, about $100 a year. It was reasonable. To me, it's not a ripoff. It depends how you use these apps. I also subscribe to ESPN Plus. That's about $7 a month and all. And, there's certain things you could see on ESPN Plus, documentaries that you can't normally see on ESPN unless you just happen to be available at time. Then you could see them later on. It all depends on how you use these things.
All right.
It's like you, Pags, having a membership to the golf club. I'm sure you got one to one of these country clubs, Pags. It depends how often you use it.
Well, exactly. And I'm not using it. It's like that spending the $10 a month for, my Planet Fitness, membership. And they never saw me there either. Asked, hey, listen, I'm going to cancel this. They're like, who are you? So, that's obviously
that's a bargain.
That was the, and they made probably about 2 years worth off of me, and I never stepped foot in the place.
Yeah.
So that's literally, I worked out like 3 or 4 times, cost me $240, and that was the end of that. I was like, all right, it's time for me to finally cancel the subscription. So I get it. So now, if anybody wants to go see this fight, you can go to Jack's house. He's got the fight. There you have it. Moving on. Hey, you know what? Before we go to a break, we've got 15 minutes for a break. This is probably the perfect thing because this will last a good 15 minutes because I know that you are somewhat of a Yankees fan. Are the Yankees in trouble?
I'm a big Yankee fan, Pags.
Are the Yankees in trouble? Are the Yankees going to make the playoffs?
Yeah, the Yankees will make the playoffs. Counting they have a 10-game lead in their division, and then they have something like around a 12, 13-game lead with all the teams. Worst case scenario, they'll stagger into the playoffs. They'll be holding on, and they'll be like, I'll give a boxing example. They'll be fading in the later rounds, but all they have to do is hear the final bell because they put enough rounds in the bank, enough games in the bank. But the Yankees, since they've gone backwards around the All-Star break or thereabouts, they're resembling the second half of the season, the team I thought they were going to be when I made my preseason predictions. I thought the first half was a bit of an aberration. Everything went right, and now I think this is the real Yankee team that's, shown up. But they put enough games in the bank where they should get in the playoffs. And once in the playoffs, who knows what's going to happen? We know teams that aren't doing too well during the regular season, they put it together in the playoffs. Even the Atlanta Braves, an 88 win team last year, wins the World Series. So something like that could happen again.
Well, and talking about the Braves last year, they did get hot at the right time and went into September, like the middle of September, they started to really get hot. If you remember, the Phillies were actually leading in the division as at the last day of August, and Atlanta came on pretty strong. I think that they took it over somewhere around September 7th. The Phillies were trying to catch back up to them and never could, and ultimately they wound up not doing so hot. Then Atlanta Braves wind up going to win the World Series.
Well,
Now,
I picked in the World Series last year, and I stuck with them the whole year. Like I'm sticking with the Toronto Blue Jays, who I picked to win the World Series this year. I never got off their bandwagon.
So, well, that being the case, obviously, since August has changed on the calendar, and right now today is the 17th, the Yankees have only won 3 games.
But they
They've
won
only
last
won.
night dramatically. Why are you picking on the Yankees? Josh Donaldson hits a grand slam walk-off. Today, the
Yeah.
Yankees, he should be giving the Yankees a reprieve from your criticism, Pax.
Why? Why? Like you give me a reprieve every time the Flyers would win a
Well,
game?
you're
Yeah,
the
come
you're the
on. The
bad
Yankees. The
moral.
Yankees right now are in a tailspin. They're in a tailspin. They traded all their players, and they traded some favorites
Yeah.
in the dugout, like that. They traded Joey Gallo, and I trust me. Forget about what he did at the plate. The fact that they traded him and he was a favorite in there amongst the players caused a problem. And now he's going to LA. And since then, he's only batted somewhere around 260, which is much better than what he's did for the Yankees, this entire year. And at the last 3 games, has hit a home run. Where
You have a point. All season long, I wanted to see Brett Gardner back. I wanted him in the clubhouse. He could have been a fill-in. I can understand you don't have space for them. I can even understand Brian Cashman being infatuated with Tim LeCastro, who they got from Arizona. I can understand that at least. But they got this guy, Marlon Gonzalez, or whatever his name is, who never plays. And the few times he does play, he doesn't produce anything at all, and he's an outfielder. So you mean to tell me you can't have Brett Gardner there, a veteran guy who's a comforting type player to the others? I mean, he's a stabilizing force. He's been around a while. Everyone respected Gardy. He would supply a little veteran leadership in the clubhouse over there, just seeing Gardy, talking to guys, the respect he has. So you have another guy who no one even knows who the heck he is, who stays in the background with the Yankees, and you have him taking up Gardy's spot over there. I mean, I just don't get it. I really don't.
Well, and I feel that this is a little par for course with what the Yankees have been doing. That they are not taking into consideration how their players feel. They're only seeing what they see on paper, and on paper they saw that they had such a great beginning of the season, and let's make some trades at the deadline to get everything moving in the right direction. And they wind up getting really good players who have come to New York and have really not produced the way that they did the beginning of the season. Benintendi is the perfect example.
Benintendi's producing for the Yankees. He's
just the last 2 games. The last 2 games, he's decided to find the bat.
They just got him, and his defense has been good out there. He's fine. Benintendi. Let's not use him in any way as a scapegoat. Oh, Benintendi. What do you expect from him? If Benintendi is better than average, fine. I mean, he's not the savior, whatever. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. No one is really talking about the Yankees maybe re-signing him, okay, which I hope they do. I'd like to see him start a season in New York with a clean slate, because he's a decent player. And he was a decent player with the Red Sox, an all-star with the Royals when the Yankees got him. The Stanton too, you kind of wonder about the contract. A few years ago they got him, and for a good part of the time it seemed, wow, what a lousy contract they got. Then Stanton became like the Herman Munster, that episode with Leo DeRocha. Did you ever see that? He, Michael Kay would call him Nuclear Stanton. He'd be hitting rocket shots. He was, all of a sudden it looked like, wow, the contract doesn't look bad anymore. Stanton was great. At times he'd carry the club. Now, and they started playing him in the field. They were scared to do it. And now the injury thing again, and you wonder, Stanton can't even DH. It makes me think, Pax, we're regular citizens. I mean, you claim you don't work out. I work out, believe it or not. Just try to keep fit. And I noticed as I've gotten older, after being injury-free like my whole life, the hamstring is an issue. The hamstring is a darn issue. I feel good, but once in a while, it starts nagging on me. And last winter, okay, I should say early spring, I popped my hamstring. I'm all of a sudden running. It was a little sore, and I think I'm just going to go easy on it. So 3 weeks I couldn't run. I basically took care of myself. But after 3 weeks, I was ready to go again. And I didn't have any trainers working with me, any specialists to get me ready. So you kind of wonder, these guys have all these specialists at their disposal, and you mean they can't get them ready to play again? All these guys working with them, and me, an average citizen, could be ready 3 weeks later, And I had a terrible hamstring the way it popped, because I could barely walk the first couple of days, but I gradually, got myself better. I would walk, I would do stretches, and I got there. Tell me, all these athletic trainers, I mean, what are they doing for the athletes? Because more guys on the injured list than ever before.
Well, I wish I could answer that intelligently. Unfortunately, I am not a doctor or one of those guys that knows all those types of things. But I do find that yeah, I agree with you that they wind up doing all of these things, but these athletes are so uh, the body is only meant to do a certain amount of things, and now they're stressing that to the very nth degree, so that when something happens, it's not just a small little thing. When you have something happen, when you have a hamstring pull or a tear, it's going to take a couple days, but you're not exerting on that the way that these guys are exerting on theirs. So you getting back to be able to do the things that you were doing in 3 weeks is different than them getting back to what they're doing in
Still
three
not.
weeks.
Yeah,
So
okay.
obviously, when they get a hamstring, if you get a hamstring in football, that's usually a all year situation. It's no longer, you don't get to rest it enough to be able to fix it in a way that needs to have happen, and you're going to deal with that discomfort for the rest of the season. The same thing with baseball and all these other sports. It's just, as even when you go into the nitrous tank or the nitrogen tank, when you get your body frozen down to however many and it starts to really heal itself and such, that it only speeds up that process a short amount. So you still have to go through all of those things. And we say, okay, this is what happens. We're going to blame the staff. That the staff, all of these people that are the nutritionists, the doctors that are stretching these guys out, and all these things. That it's their fault. That's their fault that these guys are doing it. Truth of the matter is that we don't know what happened the day before. If he went out drinking the night before and had was drinking shots of vodka, that stays in your system long enough where it's tightening up the muscle. That muscle where it needs more saline is now got alcohol instead, and it's tearing instead of being able to be as limber as it should be. So we can't blame the training staff on the injuries that occur, because they don't live as these guys and say, okay, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. Uh, these guys are adults, and they're going to do whatever it is they want to do. So you can't live with them 24/7 and say, no, you can't have that cheeseburger. No, you can't drink that drink. Or you got a game tomorrow. That's going to affect your play. And that's what
No, they
happens.
don't have to, but they have to work on these specific, you know, things. the specific injury to get it to be better. The problem is the athletes, baseball players, football players, they cool off during the game. You're sitting in the dugout, a baseball player, okay? You're sitting there a while. Now it's your turn to get up. You go to the on deck circle. You're swinging the bat on the on deck circle. You're not stretching. You're kind of getting your swing. You get up to home plate. You hit a ground ball, and you're sprinting to first base as hard as you can if you think you can get a hit. And you're not ready. You're not loosened up enough. And that's where injuries come in. That's where you could get like a pull when you exert that extra amount. Okay? And let's be honest about it, Pags. Just about all the time when someone is running after a ball, they're really running it play out, football, baseball, basketball, at 100%. They might be close to 100%, but they're not running all out at maximum effort, that extra push. That's when you see guys get hurt. But listen, that's another topic. I think in the future, what teams are going to have to do, and what I'd have them do now if I'm the owner of a team, I would have guys, instead of sitting in the dugout between innings and watching the game, they would be towards the locker room, stretching on bicycles, keeping limber, rather than just hanging around. I'd have a number of trainers to keep them loose, prepared to run all out. And it might look odd, it might look comical that the bench is somewhat empty, but guys are gonna, getting hurt left and right. But speaking of, the Phillies need more than that. I mean, 1-0 loss to the Cincinnati Reds. These games, Pax, they come back to haunt you. I mean, you're venting, you're putting down my Yankees. I mean, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Why? The Phillies have been playing very good ball. The Phillies, different than the Yankees, have won.
To Cincinnati. You didn't lose 1-0.
We lost 1-0 to Cincinnati on the getaway game. On the getaway game. Hey, listen, the
getaway game.
The Phillies have their own set of issues, but the Yankees right now, I would love to play in a series against the Yankees because I feel like that not only would we win that series, there's a good chance that we would sweep it because the Yankees right now stink out loud. They stink out loud for the whole month of August, really since the All-Star break. They came out of the All-Star break. They lost 2 to Houston. I've been making jokes on Started Up with Keith Engel about how Joey Gallo has been doing so much better since he got traded, and he's blaming the beard and what have you. And since the trade, that the Yankees literally have won only 3 games.
Joey Gallo couldn't do anything but get better. That's how bad he was.
Right. But you know what? The Yankees have not gotten better. The Yankees have not gotten better. That right now they stink. Their manager doesn't know what to do with themselves. And right now, I feel that the Yankees have. If I had to bet money, I'd bet money that the Yankees don't make the playoffs and the Phillies do. That's what I would bet. Just right now, as of today, that it's more of a chance that the Yankees don't make the playoffs and the Phillies absolutely do make the playoffs. Then I would say that, I think that the Yankees are going to make the playoffs, but I think they're going to go in as a wild card. I think that they're going to lose this division lead.
A 10-game lead, you think?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. It's going to go down in history as one of the worst collapses ever.
Oddly enough, Pags, I'm not going to argue with you, believe it or not, because I think this Yankee team is flawed. And I took a pounding the first half of the season when Mac took away my Yankee card. Okay?
He's going to take away the Yankees card.
Now my Yankee card, is kind of maybe, I bet, and I spoke to Mac a few days ago. I was looking forward to coming back. But now my Yankee card might be open for negotiation to get back. It was banned for me for 2 years. I was told I had a 2-year ban on my Yankee card. But now it's kind of open for negotiation, perhaps. I could get my Yankee card back, but I have to if I apologize to something like that, which I'm not going to do.
First off, I don't know that I would let anybody who's a New York Giants fan take away anything New York of mine. So that's really
I'm a Jets fan. The Jets are on an upswing, but how much of an upswing, remains to be seen. But the Jets, the future's kind of looking, better for the Jets. It's looking better. Okay.
Well, I tell you what, that's a good segue. Let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about how you feel the Jets are going to be looking better, especially since Zach Wilson's going to be out for the remaining of the preseason and possibly week 1 of the regular season. So we'll be back right after these commercial messages to hear all about how the Jets are going to do this year.
My baloney has a first name. It's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name. It's M-A-Y-E-R. Oh, I love to eat it every day. And if you ask me why, I'll say, 'cause Oscar Mayer has a way with B-O-L-O-G-N-A.
Oscar Mayer, the first name in Bologna.
How's that?
Please, give him that.
Mr. Green? Mr. Green?
Yeah.
You need any help? I just want you to know, I think you're the best ever.
Yeah, sure.
Want my Coke? It's okay, you can have it.
No.
Really, you can have it.
Okay.
A Coke and a smile makes me feel good, makes me feel nice.
Be around.
That's the way it should be. I like to see
Hey, kid.
the whole world is smiling with me. Coca-Cola as life. Have a Coke and
Thanks, Mean Joe.
Smile.
You know, one of the best things about being an ex-big leaguer is getting freebies to the game. Call the front office, bingo. And once these fans recognize me, I probably won't even have to pay for my light beer from Miller. Down it, I love them. These fans know I drink light because it's less filling and it tastes great. Good seats, huh?
You're in the wrong seat, buddy. Come on.
Oh, I must be in the front row.
Come on.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
Good seats, hey, buddy. He missed the tag. He missed the tag.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov, a public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
The Hometown Foundation is excited to bring back the Dream Ride Experience, August 26th to the 28th at Connecticut's Farmington Polo Club. Join us in celebrating the accomplishments of our Dream Riders while enjoying live music, a car and motorcycle show, family fun zone, pet adoptions, canine demonstrations, the Fireman's Chili Cook-Off, and much, much more. Get your tickets today.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready. I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, from Brooklyn. Hey, get any...
And we are back to the Mac and Jack show. Hey, we had a spirited, it was kind of going slow. We were talking about some boxing a little bit. You get everything here with the Mac and Jack show. Now we're going to talk about the New York Jets. The New York Jets. And I'm gonna preface this.
Get away from the Phillies, 1-0 loss to the Reds, Pags.
Hey, listen. Hey, yeah, you didn't say nothing that they won 11-4 the other day too. So and they beat the Reds 2 out of 3. You don't win every game. Every team wins 60 and loses 60. It's what you do with the other 42. So winning this series was okay. They lost 1-0. It ain't the biggest deal in the world. It's all right. You know what I mean? It was a getaway day. They probably were drinking the night before. They woke up a little bleary-eyed, and now they're back on the road. They're back home now and taking a break, and we get the Mets starting tomorrow. So let's see how we do against the Mets, where the Mets today, they had Scherzer yesterday, they have DeGrom today. They're not going to face either one of those pitchers in this 4-game series that we have. That we have 2 games on Saturday. So neither nor Scherzer is going to pitch. And how are the Mets going to really fare during this series is going to dictate a little bit more on how the other games are going to go as we move forward here, and see if let's see how they do against the Braves. As already the Braves have taken 2 of the first 3 games here. The Mets did win yesterday to do that. So, but we're talking about the Jets. And, I've been a fan of Joe Douglas. Joe Douglas went there. Obviously, he was friends with Adam Gase. Gase was not really a very good coach at all. And I felt that they were not going to go anywhere as long as he was in charge of that franchise. He's no longer in charge of that franchise. Joe Douglas was very integral in being one of the main components to building the team that won the Super Bowl here in Philadelphia. And then, of course, he takes the job up in New York as a recommendation from Gase. Gase was like, I want you here. I want you here. I want you here. Gase is gone. Joe Douglas is there. And I feel that he is starting to rebuild this franchise the right way. And hopefully they allow him the time to do it, because everything takes time. And when you build the franchise the right way, you have to get the real pieces in place. So he's really started by doing what he does best, offensive and defensive line. But he also got a quarterback that they thought would be able to be the guy here, Zach Wilson. He kind of took a page from the Carson Wentz, was like, yeah, this guy's not really the main guy, but let's see what he can do. And only thing that's really come out of there is that he had a good end of season last year, and that he's really good friends with his mother's friends.
Yeah, I mean, the jury is still out on those picks. I mean, that he came up with, Joe Douglas, Zach Wilson. I mean, the first 4 picks of this year's draft, I mean, Joe Douglas did seem to hit it perfectly. When I say the jury's still out, I meant on Zach Wilson. I'm sorry. So let me kind of retract that. It's his second year. Why do people assume a quarterback's automatically going to take a leap forward in the second year? Doesn't there have to be some type of evidence? He has to show it at some point. Does the offseason automatically make him better? Does taking his lumps in 1 year automatically make him better for the next? I mean, we don't know. Trevor Lawrence, the number 1 overall pick, the guy who went 1 spot ahead of Zach Wilson in the draft, at least he had a really good final game of the season last year, knocking the Indianapolis Colts out of the playoffs, and at least showing what he could do. Zach Wilson has shown some flashes, but can anyone show flashes? I mean, we really don't know. And they want to get him the weapons, the people around him who could help him. But Mikael Becton, his, offensive lineman, suffered in the injuries. He's out for the season. That's a big blow, because Zach Wilson was under a lot of pressure, and he can't afford to lose a player like that. I mean, so it's really the surrounding guys, that he has around them. And I think the Jets are still in a they're in the honeymoon period. Last year, they went a complete honeymoon period for Robert Saleh, the head coach. This year, I think they're in a semi-honeymoon period. They go 4-13 again and play the same exact way with this group, with the added picks. People aren't going to want to hear about injuries. Everyone has injuries. Point to every single team. They've had to overcome it. Why do the good franchises win year after year? Don't tell me they don't have injuries and you have injuries. Then it's the way you put your staff together, and how you're doing things if that's the case. Jets can't be out on an island alone in the AFC East this year and have the fans happy. In other words, between Buffalo, Miami, New England, and the Jets, they've got to be close to one of the other teams, close to one of the other big three. If the Jets go 7-10 this year, I think the fan base will be satisfied as long as there is progress, notably at the quarterback position with Zach Wilson, but they'll see how the other players, come around, like Sauce Gardner at cornerback. If he establishes himself as an all-pro type cornerback, Jet fans are going to be extremely, extremely happy. Beast Hall at running back adds to that position. We're going to see the way everything is going to play out there. But the Jets have to show improvement this year. They could go from 4-13 to 7-10, and then the year after that to 9-8, and the fan base will hang in there. But if the Jets, have a disastrous year, they go 3-14, and it's a step backwards, the fan base there's going to be a lot of unrest, and I have a certain fear. Zach Wilson is not supposed to miss a lot of time, but if he does, Robert Saleh is very confident in Joe Flacco. What's he been watching? What has he been watching? Flacco at his best was a good game manager, a very good game manager. He was never an elite NFL quarterback. You put him in a category of a Kirk Cousins. He was good. Let's give him you know what he is? He was a solid B plus student his whole college career. You could always count on him to get B's, B pluses. But, you want to win. You win the Super Bowl with an A plus, type guy in the position. But he's no longer that, Flacco. Flacco is just past his peak. He lost it a while ago. The Ravens never would have replaced him with Lamar Jackson had Flacco's performances not been slipping. Okay? Right. Lamar Jackson, I think, was drafted, if I'm not mistaken, number 32 overall in the draft. They got him because he was available, great athlete. But if Joe Flacco, he would have held Lamar Jackson off for a while. The move wouldn't have been made during a playoff game, that's for sure. Yeah, Robert Saleh is so confident in him. And I guess I don't know that Joe Douglas reacquire Flacco based on Saleh begging him to, because the Jets traded Saleh to the Eagles and they trade back for him. That means they really do like him. And
they didn't trade him. They didn't trade Flacco. Flacco was a free agent and signed with the Eagles and then traded back for him.
Oh, for fifth round pick.
Right. Okay. Correct. So, but that was because at that time, again, they needed a quarterback and they just trusted Flacco more than anything else. I understand. You got to be able to. First off, you got to deal with the cards you're dealt. And you got to keep your poker face up by saying, hey, I like my cards. My cards are great. And that's what he's doing with Joe Flacco right here. I don't think that there's anything beyond that. I think he's got his cards and this is what he's dealt. And as long as Zach Wilson is going to be back very soon, that he's going to say, hey, Flacco's my guy and I'm going to stick with this in the meantime. And, he's going to be serviceable enough. And, hopefully that's only 1 or 2 games that he may have to play, and then Zach Wilson comes back.
Well. And what about Mike White? Mike White lit it up the first game he got in last year. He was sensational for game, but now White is the third-string quarterback, which is fine if that's what they want. But the idea of Flacco, I don't see him, carrying a team. But let's say the rest of the team plays well and Flacco is steady. He's good. He's not going to be sensational. He's not going to be outstanding. But let's say he's steady. He's a good game manager. What do? When Zach Wilson is healthy, if Flacco is doing okay at the quarterback position, do you leave him in a veteran like that, Or do you go with a still basically raw guy who's, 1 year removed from being a rookie and who didn't have a good rookie year at that?
If you're asking me, I put in Zach Wilson because Zach Wilson is the future. You know what you got with Flacco. You already know what you got. So you have to have him go play games. And the truth of the matter is that right now, this is, it's been now ingrained in our culture in the last 10 to 15 years of this cancel culture. Back before 15 years ago, before any of this occurred, you would draft a quarterback and he would have his first year, his rookie season, or his inaugural season, because most quarterbacks didn't play in their rookie season, and then they would have a sophomore slump. But you stayed with them because this was your franchise. You never decided to let them go or whatever. Now it's like, oh, all right, so he's got to come out of the gate and be amazing because we had Patrick Mahomes, who was amazing in the first game he ever played. And you had all these other quarterbacks that were amazing. In their second year, they won Super Bowls. You have Ben Roethlisberger in their second year won a Super Bowl. Brady won a Super Bowl in his second year. Patrick Mahomes won a Super Bowl in his second year.
It depends who's there, but Pax, it depends who's there. If you have a good established quarterback, even if you've drafted highly a quarterback who you want him to be a future, I could understand him sitting. They had Alex Smith was the chief quarterback, okay? A decent established quarterback, not great, but a good quality NFL quarterback, nothing special. So it's okay. And the Chiefs were a playoff team, so you keep Mahomes maybe 1 year. I can understand that. Same with Eli Manning. The Giants had Kurt Warner, an established, elite, I don't want to say elite quarterback at the time, but he had a lot left, and he showed it with Arizona going to Super Bowl after that. But, these were the type of guys, you could sit behind for a year. But a Joe Flacco, I just don't see, in a way I'm thinking, Pags. I'm thinking. Let me throw this this is a school of thought now. Maybe Mike White isn't starting for the Jets because he's a young quarterback. And if he plays really, really well the way he did in that one game last year, when Zach Wilson is ready, Jet fans will be up in arms. They're going to want Mike White to have the position. Maybe the Jet brass knows with the old warhorse Joe Flacco, even if he plays well, you kind of know what you have. He's a veteran. He's going to have to sit soon for the young guy, Zach Wilson, but not Mike White. Because after Mike White had that one big game, people were saying, well, who do you think should be starting for the Jets? Whoa, they were going to give up on the number 2 overall pick in the draft. Give me a break. That's why the Niners, maybe they stayed with Garoppolo last year. They figured Lance needs more seasoning. And they decided this year, we can't wait any longer on this. The 1 year's out of the way. We're either going to live or die with Trey Lance as our starter. And then you get poor Justin Fields at Chicago. A lousy offensive line, lousy team. What a miserable year he's going to have in Chicago. And he was considered, a savior for the franchise.
Right.
And what a lousy, situation to be in.
I agree. But that's, ultimately you can't help where you get drafted at, and you got to just be able to do your best. And the problem is that certain franchises are train wrecks. Right now, the Bears are a train wreck. The Jets have been a train wreck for a long time. So these
are now. They're not a train wreck now. Repairs are there.
That's what I'm saying. They've been a train wreck for a long time. However, it's been ingrained. So yes, I understand what you're saying when they talk about if White was to play well, the what have you done for me now? Not lately, even. It's what have you done for me now is so ingrained that automatic. We want this to happen. Right. We've been so bad for so long that we want to be great right this second. See, all these other teams go from worst to first, and the thing is about those teams that go from worst to first is that they have the pieces in place to do better at the time, but don't, whether it's be via injury or they just don't have the right quarterback, they don't have the right receivers, the right running back, the good defensive backs, that they get beat up in certain ways. And, for instance, when Jason Peters got hurt in 2017, he was the best offensive tackle in the league when he got hurt. Then, okay, now he's hurt, and now we've got to fill in that spot. Well, when you have the best in the league, there's everybody else behind them. So you don't need necessarily the best in the league to service that position. You could get someone who's good. Well, obviously he's not Jason Peters, but he was serviceable enough to win. And then, of course, you have to do schemes. So, at that time, we still had Brent Selleck, who was an amazing blocking tight end. And he also was right next to the guy who was Louis Vaitai at the time, who's now got a pretty good career, has had a pretty good couple of years with Detroit since he left the Eagles in 2018, after the 2018 season. But he was actually a fairly good tackle. And then we had, between him and Selleck, they both together were able to fill the shoes of Jason Peters. But you couldn't just fill Jason Peters' shoes because he was an all-pro tackle. And, and literally will be a Hall of Famer because of how well he was for as long as he was. Same type of situation anywhere. When you are a team that goes from worst to first, you have a lot of the pieces in place. You just don't have some of the major components. So when the Eagles went from worst to first. Right, exactly. And the thing is, the Bengals did it because, obviously Joe Burrows hid a lot of the deficiencies that the Bengals had. And that biggest deficiency was on the offensive line. Imagine if he had a halfway decent offensive line, not even just a straight out bad offensive line, getting sacked 7-8 times a game. If he had a halfway decent time where they were able to stop a third of the sacks that came on him, imagine how great they would have been. How amazing, how that Super Bowl may have ended differently with Joe Burrows, just by a third of the sacks disappearing. So that was the biggest difference that I saw, that the quarterback was able to hide so many of those things. And what was the biggest difference from the year before? He got hurt because the offensive line stunk back then too, when he took, got an ACL. So obviously he needed to have that.
Let's be honest, most offensive lines in the NFL just aren't good.
Right.
That's the one thing that in recent years, performance-wise, has went down in the NFL offensive lines. Quarterbacks always seem to be in a lot of trouble. Years ago, coaches would insist that their quarterbacks stay in the pocket, that it should be rare that they leave the pocket. For a couple of reasons. One, they didn't want them getting injured running around. But number two, that's just the way the game was played. They wanted pocket passes. And even though to an extent that's still true, they don't want quarterbacks running around much. The rules have changed also, where the quarterbacks can't get hit as hard in general. You can't take an extra hit on them. But the amount of pressure that they're putting on these quarterbacks, they're really under so much duress. Some can handle it, the experienced guys who've been around, but like an Aaron Rodgers, a Tom Brady, they can kind of handle it to an extent. But a lot of the younger quarterbacks, it's a tough way to learn.
Well, and Tom Brady, the reason why Tom Brady is so great, and he didn't have fantastic offensive lines throughout his career. He was just fast with the ball. He was fast to get the ball out. He knew that he had only the 2.5 seconds. At 3, he needed to have that ball out, or else he was going to get crushed. And so he would have it out. So, and that was of these quarterbacks who didn't have the best offensive lines were able to get around that. You can't. That's why Carson Wentz has the biggest problem that he does. That he's always trying to make a play happen, and he's got to run around. Well, since he's got that ACL injury, he's not able to run around as quickly as he was before. So he doesn't have that same mobility as he did, and now he can't make those plays happen because they catch up to him faster. He doesn't have that internal clock that says, hey, He's still playing street football. That, hey, if I stay free long enough, that I'm going to be able to make a play happen, and we're going to be able to move the chains. And it doesn't work that way anymore. It doesn't happen. That's why you find that the best offensive and defensive lines are in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. That's what happens. Again, the Bengals had a great defensive line last year. They were always putting pressure on the quarterback. They may not have had a tremendous amount of sacks, but they were always pushing in the pocket, and they were getting push back into the backfield. So that actually played a big part of them winning games. That's why I think the Eagles right now are going to be great, because they have, I feel like, arguably the best offensive line in the NFL. And right now, again, arguably one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. And if those two things, if you win those battles every game, you win most of your games.
I'm going to tell you, when last year in the AFC Championship game, when the Chiefs are playing the Bengals, the Bengal defensive line was putting such pressure on Patrick Mahomes. It was really, really bad. They send the game into overtime after the Chiefs had like a 17-point lead and looked like a lock to, go to the Super Bowl again. So now they're having the coin flip. And I'm telling myself, if I'm the Kansas City Chiefs, I don't want to win the coin flip. I know it sounds crazy because they're beating up Patrick Mahomes. He's probably not moving the ball in the first possession. This isn't the Buffalo Bills who they beat before that.
Right.
And they win the coin flip, and he's so harried, they can't do anything on offense, and they have to punt the ball, and they wind up losing the game, in the next possession. But it was like, and it happened in the Super Bowl the year before with Mahomes. The Tampa Bay defensive line constantly on him, and the Chiefs have addressed their offensive line issues, but you can make the greatest moves on paper, but sometimes it doesn't play out on the field, and that's what the NFL has basically come down to. But back with the Jets here. Now, the Jets drafted number 10 overall Garrett Wilson, a wide receiver from Ohio State. And the Jets were linked to DK Metcalf before that. But they decided, rather than take on a big contract with DK Metcalf, even though they may have figured it would be worth it, they thought they could get great value by drafting, a receiver like Garrett Wilson, who they didn't know would be available at number 10 overall. He reportedly is the most acrobatic receiver in the draft, makes phenomenal catches. He's like a version, supposedly, of Odell Beckham Jr. with some of the plays he can make, the way he can go up and get the ball. Those are the guys you love, because a lot of times quarterbacks are under pressure and they throw what's the equivalent of a jump ball. But if you got a guy who's sensational at jump balls, you figure you're not going to lose there. They're not going to intercept you. If he doesn't come down with the ball, he's going to be fighting to the point where he'll get his hands on it. In the worst case scenario, the ball will drop down. But even then, there's a good chance you're going to complete a jump ball type pass. So that's what they got in Garrett Wilson. But not Garrett Wilson, right? But they've got to be able to get him the ball. Zach Wilson, man. The connection just has to take place. There's a lot of drama, a lot of storylines in the NFL. You said something very interesting that before about there always being some train wrecks in the NFL. We agree on Chicago. I can't think off the top of my head, is there any other team that's really a train wreck in the NFL? I could think of some that are going to have poor records, but I don't know what I call them a train wreck. I wouldn't call the Texans a train wreck. I think they actually overachieved last year, winning a few games. They were actually a little better than I thought. And I think the Texans, they could win 4 or 5 games, maybe 6 games. I don't know, but I wouldn't call them a disaster. Not much is expected of them. I wouldn't call the Giants that. I wouldn't call the Commanders that. Last year, people may have came close to calling the Eagles that last year. Maybe not a train wreck, but only a level above a train wreck last year. And look at that. The Eagles made the playoffs.
As
So
I
I
said
don't.
they would. As I said they would. I
As
actually I
you
didn't think
said
that they were going to
before,
make the playoffs,
you
but
called it.
I said that they were going to have a winning record because of the ease of the schedule. You guys all laughed at me, and then we had Senna Laquido come on, and he even
You put him in his
had to.
place, Joe. Joe, maybe I could get Joe to come on again. I think he'd want. He gives you your due, by the way. I talked to him in private. He said you called it. The only way he defended himself, he rationalized off camera. He says, "Yeah, but everyone else was agreeing with me.
Right.
Everyone he talked to." That's what he said. So he basically saying, "Look, I'm not out there alone. Give Pags his due. He nailed it. He called it perfectly. Full credit to him." But it's not like I didn't know. But he was saying if I didn't know what I was talking about, then I had a lot of company that didn't know what they were talking about.
Well, and I'm going to say that there are a lot more people that are on my side of things now in comparison. He may be very similar. He may look at this team and say, "Yeah, I see 11 wins." The thing is I'm looking as I look at the Eagles right now and I look at their schedule. I look to try to find the losses, and it's hard to find 6 losses even. I'm winging it and saying, okay, that this is a loss here where it could be a win, it should be a win. Like, for instance, I kind of keep thinking that going to Chicago in December is going to be a loss. And Chicago may not win but 3 games this year. But they're going to beat the Eagles that year because that week because it's one of those games. It's in Chicago in cold weather. It's one of the
what's on the line. It depends what's on the line. Now, listen, Philadelphia is not exactly warm weather that time of the year, either December. So I don't know what it necessarily, and it's cold weather overrated and how it helps one team doesn't help another. Because keep in mind, New York, which certainly in the winter isn't warm, the Giants, when they've won a couple of big playoff games. I should say the Packers lost a couple of big playoff games. One to the Giants, for the Giants to go to the Super Bowl. Packers lost. They lost with Brett Favre against the Giants when the Giants went to the Super Bowl that year. And the Packers lost to Jimmy Garoppolo in the Niners, last year as well. And it was in cold Green Bay. So, I don't know. But I will say this. With the Eagles, if the Eagles improve, with an improvement means it could be as little as going from 9-8 to 10-7 and winning at least one playoff game. If they're 10-7 and win one playoff game, I'm not saying the fan base is going to be happy, but the fan base isn't going to be calling for people's heads. I don't think, oh, get us this, get us that. They'll be a little unsatisfied. Look, we could have maybe won a game or 2 more. We could have maybe won an extra playoff game, but I don't think there's going to be, massive indignation, there with the Eagle fans. But let's say the Eagles have the type of year you think they're going to have. Let's say they go 11-6, a nice record, and go to the NFC Championship game. Fans are going to feel a little disappointed they didn't quite get to the Super Bowl, but they're going to look and say, this was a good year. We could hold our heads high. But that means next year, Jalen Hurts better take them to the Super Bowl, because anything less than the Super Bowl, Eagle fans going to think going to have to maybe start thinking of rebuilding / rebooting, and the bar's now set higher 1 year in advance than it should have been, because the Eagles exceeded expectations, because 7-10 last year would have been, I think a lot of Eagle fans would have been content, but because they make the playoffs, the type of year they had last year, that people aren't going to be content with in Philadelphia, and they would have been content with that year this year had the Eagles not done it last year.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I think that with the ease of the schedule last year, had they lost some of the games that they were expected to lose, that would have caused an issue. That when you saw how they were when they were winning the games in comparison to how they were when they lost the game, some of the losses that they had, they got straight out beat. The playoff game against Tampa, they were straight out beat. They were out coached. They were outplayed completely, 100%. And that was a real loss. But when you look at the loss against the 49ers in the beginning of the season and how they should have run the ball a few times and just didn't. They chose not to do it, and they wound up losing a nail biter. It was like 14-10 game or 13-10. It wasn't anything spectacular because the defense did their job. They just couldn't put points on the board. There were a number of games that they just could not put points on the board, and that was part of the issue, that they had to turn around and actually switch to a running game. And they realized then at that point that Gannon had to switch around his defense to be able to do things better. And once they started to make those adjustments, things started to turn around.
What I'm gathering, I'm hearing, even though the Eagles had success running the ball the second half of the year last year, they are a bit thin at the running back position. That's what I hear, that they didn't really make any moves, any really upgrade. Unlike, the wide receiver position getting Green there. So what happened last year is basically past history. But the interesting thing is teams can't really challenge Jalen Hurts to beat him in the air because he has two elite receivers, two of the better receivers arguably in the NFL. So you're going to maybe you don't want to challenge him, so that might help the running game.
Two elite receivers and a great tight end.
Yeah.
So those are the big deals that are right there. And everybody likes to push off and forget about Jalen Reagor. And I know even Eagles fans are like, oh, we can't wait for Reagor to be gone. I tell you, there's going to be a time this year where I'm going to get to say, I told you that Reagor is going to prove his worth a little bit. He's going to prove it a lot better than he has up to this point. And the fact that he's got that chip on his shoulder, he's going to wind up making this team, and he's going to wind up catching a few touchdowns, some of them going to be really important because he's going to be the one forgotten about in the midst of this. That in the process of having Brown and Devonta Smith, and I tell you, Brown is the guy who can get the ball. When you're throwing that, the jump ball, he's going to get that jump ball. And I tell you, Devonta Smith, anytime the ball is anywhere within, his circle, he gets the ball because he's a magnet. It just, for some reason or another, he's able to pull down that ball.
He's a jump ball type receiver we talked about before. Just get the ball up for him, even if he's guarded. You have a few guys in the league like that. Even if they're guarded tightly, it's okay to throw them the ball. They don't have to necessarily make separation. You have a few guys like that because they're so athletic. And all you have to do is throw the ball high enough, let them leap up with the other guy at the same time, and there's a good chance they can come down with it.
Well, and when I think of Devonta Smith, I think of another Smith that I compare him to, Steve Smith, who was, again, undersized receiver, but amazing. Was able to come up with the ball all the time and just had the one thing that nobody knew about Steve Smith, because when you listen to him talk, he didn't come across the best. But he was like overly intelligent. Like he just knew what to do on a football field, knew exactly how to be able to break the ankles of the cornerback and get himself open, if even for the window of like a few seconds at time. Devonta Smith is the exact same way, except he's able to really speak a lot better than Steve Smith.
So do you like the Eagles' big two receivers better than the Cowboys, Lamb and Galloway?
Lots. Oh, tons. I think Lamb is weak. Lamb is weak, and you're starting to find that out now.
Yeah, because the Cowboys moved on from Amari Cooper in part, not completely, because he had issues with not getting vaccinated, with COVID and this and that for a while. But they're putting a lot on CeeDee Lamb's shoulders this year. And, it's interesting the way things change one year to the next, because 1 year ago, the Washington football team, now the Commanders, they were the Eastern Conference champions, the defending champions technically, and there were a number of people picking them to win it and prove, because they reportedly had a defense that was starting to become elite. Who knew they would slide as backward, as they did. And the Giants made certain moves, and people thought, they're going to, have a good chance to have a winning record here, meaning they're going to contend for the title as well. Now Washington isn't considered quite a serious contender, and neither the Giants. So it comes down to, it's like a two-team race. It's like the Eagles' big rival is the Dallas Cowboys. It's like they're neck and neck. Who's going to win the division, Dallas or Philadelphia? And already those are like the big games. I mean, there's always a chance Washington or the Giants could surprise us, and they could contend. But it just seems like a two-horse race now, Cowboys and Eagles.
I agree. And I'll be honest, I feel that even the Cowboys are getting love that they really don't deserve. When I say that, I mean because everybody's saying, hey, that Ezekiel Elliott's going to come back and he's coming back stronger than ever. And I'm thinking he's getting a little long in the tooth, isn't he? And I think that Pollard's really the better back out of the two of them. That Pollard's really the guy. When it comes to Eagles games, I ain't concerned about Zeke. I'm more concerned about Pollard because Pollard's the one that eats us up. And Zeke is just
they have
like
a good offensive line, the Cowboys. That's one area that
Well, they have an okay offensive line. They lost a piece last year, and I don't think that they are as strong as everybody says that they are. Now, Dak Prescott has the ability to throw 500-yard games. The problem is that every time he throws a 500-yard game, they lose that game. And that's part of the thing that comes, that you need everybody around to be able to do well. And even when the Cowboys beat the Eagles and they beat in the first game, the second game, I know that we didn't really play anybody, and you could still say they scored 50 points on us. I get it, I understand, whatever. Truth of the matter is that the first game, Game 3 of the season, they beat us, and they beat us handily because they were able to use everybody. Schultz was the big guy in that game. He was the tight end. He cemented his contract on that game alone, and then came back and actually did well in the second game of the series. Realistically, doesn't matter what anybody says. It doesn't matter when it goes back to the original Jimmy Johnson year, where he says, I am building my team to beat the Eagles, because if we could beat the Eagles, we'll beat every other team. And that has been Jerry Jones's mindset throughout all of this. He tries to build the team to beat the Eagles. And if you can beat the Eagles, you can beat every other team in the NFL. And that's the mindset that they have, the way that they look at how they build their teams. And that's why they have it built the way they do. Right now, I feel like that they have taken away a little bit from their offensive line. They've taken away a little bit from their defensive line. They do have Micah Parsons, who does change some of that dynamic because he's such a world player on that defense, that he's able to make those adjustments and those changes that make you have to notice where he's at on the field. And there's not many players in the NFL in general that make you have to note where they're at. And he's one of them, and so I feel that he protects them a little bit, but realistically, I think that the Cowboys are a 9-8 team. I don't think that they're as good. I think that they lost some pieces on the rest of their defense. They lost some pieces on their offense.
How's Nakobe Dean coming along? Because he fell to the third round because teams were to the Eagles because teams were scared, the injury factor. He's undersized, and so
he is. Yeah, they are. So in the preseason game, they gave him the keys to the defense, and he was the one calling the defenses. And his leadership is ahead of his talent right now for the defense. So although I don't believe he's going to be the starting linebacker in game 1, I think by game 4, he will be on the starting rotation, and you will see him out there more frequently. I think it's just a matter of the injury lingered a little bit longer than it was supposed to. He's just a little bit undersized, but that doesn't matter. I think that his intelligence and his football acumen is going to start to become more and more. And it's not going to necessarily matter about the size. It's going to matter of how he sees the field. And once he starts to see the field the way with the speed of the NFL in comparison to the way he saw it in college, you're going to see an amazing player, and he's going to be the steal of the draft in the 3rd round.
Steal the draft. I'll tell you, when we had Jim Jeffcoat on the show, I said before the season began, and I said it during the draft last year, Micah Parsons was the best player in the draft. I said it point blank beforehand. So you wonder how the scouts could let him slip. Did they think there were conduct issues off the field? Some stuff happened when he was young, not outrageous, but you're young, you're a little immature. And you sometimes wonder, like even this year, there's this player, a cornerback out of Washington, Trent McDuffie. I think the Chiefs moved up and got him at about 19 or 20 in the draft. But the idea he would fall Trent McDuffie so far, he's going to anchor the Chief defense. He's going to be outstanding. Why didn't he go early in the draft? Because I think these teams are scared to reach. They think, well, if a guy is about that, his value is at number 20, I'm not going to pick him at number 4. So they don't wind up getting him, and they get a guy inferior to him. Look out for Trent McDuffie. He's my name this year. I'm saying it beforehand. And if I nail it with Trent McDuffie, if he's the best player in the draft, the way I'm saying, another defensive guy, and it's 2 years in a row that I got it. I mean, it's ridiculous that the scouts and the player personnel advisors, don't get it.
Well, and I would say that I'd almost agree with you, except for the fact that there's Jordan Davis and the fact that he fell as far as he did without anybody picking him up because of all the bap talking about, oh, he's not a 4-down guy, because at Georgia they have 180 people that are over there on the sideline that they can rotate him out, that he only needs to play 2 plays a series. Jordan Davis is a beast. He's an absolute beast. And I would say that he is going to have such an impact on the Eagles defense and on opposing offensive lines. I mean, he got was getting triple teamed by the Jets. When you get triple teamed, that leaves only 2 more guys to pay attention. And they were in a 3-man front at that time. So they had 1 man on Hargrave. They had 1 man on Ridgeway, and Jordan Davis had 3 guys on him. Now put Fletcher Cox in there and put a 4-man front. And you got Brandon Graham and Ridgeway going up and going after the quarterback. Well, you won't need to have a blitz, because
the last year for Fletcher Cox. So what is this?
I think so. I don't know. I think it might be the last year for him as an Eagle.
Or not, Pax, Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I would say he's a Hall of Famer. I don't know that he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I would say he's a Hall of Famer. That he, I want to say for a certain amount of time in this league, he was listed as one of the best. And I would say short of the guy for the Rams, that he is, probably 2nd or 3rd on that list over the last 10 years. I'm talking about Fletcher Cox.
I'm a little surprised he's with the Eagles this year. And I'm going to tell you why.
I don't think he wants to leave. And I'll be honest with you. I think that he may sign for another year.
Not him. I thought he'd be gently shown the door, very gently, because, he's meant an awful lot to the Eagle organization. Because when a veteran like that is starting to complain about the way things are being done, and he's venting his displeasure, the younger guys follow a leader like that. And that's not the most comfortable position for a coaching staff to be in. And he started complaining, and he hasn't been known as a complainer as far as I know, but he was venting with the formations, how, he's being used and this and that. And I guess
you have to listen. You have to listen to the way that he vented. He was answering questions, honestly, which, maybe was the venting that you're talking about. But he was like, hey, listen, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. You're putting me out in coverage. Well, I'm not a guy who knows how to cover anybody. I go after the quarterback. I go after the ball. That's what I do best. So if you're putting me in a coverage type of situation, well, obviously I'm not going to excel at that. And he kind of said that out loud. And then other linemen said the exact same thing, is that we are not coverage guys. You don't we're not set to be able to do it like that. We have to go after the quarterback. And Gannon finally listened. He had to change up some of his scheme, and all of a sudden the defense started playing a lot better. So when you're telling your coach that, hey, I don't think this is going to work the way it is, and the coach isn't listening, coach has got to find out for himself. Well, ultimately, that's what happened. The coach started to find out for himself. More people started to get vocal about it, and then ultimately he did that. But Fletcher Cox was very integral in the part of winning the Super Bowl. He was one of the mainstays on this defense. He is. I think that even now with Davis, there's a possibility he will be back next year. He may sign another 1 or 2 year deal, specifically because now that you have Davis there, and if Davis is taking double teams, you can't double team both him and Cox. You're going to have to leave one of them open, and I think Cox is going to have a resurgence this year where he's going to be the one that actually disrupts a lot of these plays because Davis is taking all of the energy away from the offensive line. And I think that's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, getting to other teams. What's the situation with Jimmy Garoppolo? I mean, he got hurt supposedly last year, in the playoff game, whatever, had some surgery. We don't hear updates. I mean, he should be healed by now, ready to go. Hear what his prognosis is. I just want to hear, no, Jimmy G is healthy from his agents. He's 100% ready. We don't hear his agents talking out publicly.
Oh, no, they said that. Oh, that he is.
Oh,
they did not. So the 49ers have not put him on the PUP. They can't put him on the PUP. So he's able to perform. They just do not have him invited to camp.
I mean, let's say something happens with Trey Lance. Maybe they figure Jimmy G knows the system. We could quickly gear the offense to his liking because he's been here before. So I can understand that. And Jimmy G, even though by all accounts he's a nice guy, he's not a communicator. It's supposedly hard to get in touch with him. But Jimmy G did impress me. Even when they drafted Trey Lance, he never demanded a trade. He seemed at peace with himself. Like, oh, you want to play me? I'm on the contract. I'll do my best. And if you want to trade me, I'm good with that too. It's like he didn't give a darn. Nothing fazed the guy.
Right.
Nothing fazed him at all. Jimmy G's just happy. He'll pick up a paycheck, and he'll fulfill his obligation to the best he can. So in this day of prima donna players, I mean, that in a certain sense is refreshing. But you want him to show a little more fire there. Like you look at the Carolina Panther quarterback starting position. We know it's going to go to Baker Mayfield. I mean, it was Baker Mayfield's to lose all along. Sam Darnold would have had to substantially outplay Baker Mayfield. He would have had to do it by far to remain as the starter. Because what does that do to Baker Mayfield's ego? He comes to Carolina and he's sitting behind Sam Darnold. Would they have started Sam Darnold had he played much better in the preseason? I guess they maybe would have, maybe. But now it's going to be Baker's job there. Baker Mayfield's been in the league 4 years. He's had 2 good seasons out of the 4. Last year, he was atrocious at the end of the game. You mentioned Jimmy Johnson before on the CBS crew who's broadcasting the late season game, the Browns against the Packers. They were exasperated. Jimmy Johnson was basically saying, get rid of him, but you first have to see that you have someone better. He didn't want him there. I mean, some of those throws were awful. Right. And at what point do we say a guy was hurt, not hurt? I don't know.
Well, that was the problem. He was playing hurt, and he didn't really have the opportunity to get himself better. And he went out there and he tried to perform instead of saying, hey, listen, guys, I don't think I can do it. They had him out there and kept trying to do it, and he didn't do it. And ultimately, that reflects on, by showing, hey, you didn't play well. Well, because you didn't play well, they didn't win. And because you didn't win, now you get traded. So, ultimately, I we'll see when all of the reports finally come out about Watson on how everything really falls for them. But they're happy with, is it Jacoby Brissett who's they've already announced that he's going to be starting game 1 for the Browns.
said is competent, but he's the type of guy you want as your backup quarterback. Okay,
Right.
Listen, he was with New England. Anyone would be a backup to Brady. But then he was given an opportunity, given a starting job at Indianapolis, and he couldn't make it as a starter there. So let's be honest, when guys are given an opportunity to start in one place and they can't hold on to the job, unless it's a rare case of circumstances working against them, why do people think it's going to work somewhere else? Marcus Mariota had the job at Tennessee for years. And now, I mean, he's with the Falcons as the starter? That they really think he's more than a bridge quarterback, and a bridge to who exactly? I mean, I don't want to hear Desmond Ridder,
Well, first, I think you wanted to talk about train wrecks. Train wrecks. Atlanta's a train wreck. That's a train wreck of the franchise.
Jameis Winston. Yeah, Jameis Winston. I mean, I don't know what the, Saints, what's going on. And I'm a little confused. Andy Dalton, did he wind up with, wait. Andy Dalton, isn't he with the Saints now, if I'm not mistaken?
I think he is with the Saints. He's backing up.
Yeah.
He's backing up Winston.
These guys, but if you have to count on these guys to be your starters, these guys are the type of guys you want as backups. You want to have a franchise quarterback and have these guys as backups, guys that are kind of competent, like with the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen, no debate, he's your quarterback, not the slightest competition. And you have a guy like Case Keenum. So if Josh Allen can't play, Case Keenum is competent enough to come in for a few games and, and perhaps get the job done. He did it with Minnesota. He got the job done for a while.
Right. But that's it. Yeah, when it came down to the NFC Championship game, he had such a poor performance that they said, you know what, you don't come back. We're going to go get Kirk Cousins.
Where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio, the song with Simon and Garfunkel? Where have you gone, Teddy Bridgewater?
Yep. He's what? Is he still backing up in Denver?
I don't. That's a great question. I mean, certain guys are getting other chances. Obviously Russell Wilson is, it's make or break with Russell Wilson, but I guess Teddy Bridgewater, last I heard, was that. And Geno Smith actually has a starting job.
That's the start of the tanking. That's the tanking for whatever name is the big name. They are tanking this year.
Some teams you want to call them a train wreck, but any team with, DK Metcalf and Jamal Adams, those two are studs. You don't want to call, those guys are impact players, but the only two players, Seattle's a train wreck.
Yes, and DK Metcalf is a cancer, and you can't tell me any differently. That's I firmly believe that. And I think that that's going to start to get out more and more, to everybody else, is that he is a cancer in the locker room, and that ultimately he's the reason why Russell Wilson isn't there anymore, and he wound up going to Denver. The game may have passed Russell Wilson by, but DK Metcalf being the loudest voice in that locker room and one that everybody decided to go with, they felt like they needed to stick with him, and they gave him all this money. So now he's the one running. He's the one with the keys to that franchise, and I think he's a cancer.
He might not be at this year. Let me quickly say it, because I know we're coming towards the end, because he just signed a 3-year deal with a lot of guaranteed money, and they probably sat him down. He says, I understand. We're probably not winning this year. It's developing young guys. I'll be a leader. I'm on board. So I don't think he's going to be a problem this year. I think he'll try to be supportive and help with the redevelopment, because he's got his money. He's got his money, and that makes a difference.
Well, we will see, and we'll talk about this more tomorrow as we have Byron Williams come up. Keith Engel will show up here tomorrow. So obviously for Friday's Mac and Jack, and hopefully with any luck, we may even see a quick cameo by Mac himself. So I don't want to tease it a little bit. So tune in tomorrow as we do another Mac and Jack show. Everybody, thank you for hanging with us today. And as we'll see you guys tomorrow, everybody have a great Thursday. Take care.